Welcome back to another episode of WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. I'm George Upper, editor-in-chief of the Western Journal, reminding you as always to click that subscribe button and the bell next to it so you're always reminded when a new episode of WJ Live shows up on YouTube. You know they don't want you watching this show, but for now they're letting us remind you when it's on. So don't miss an episode. Click subscribe, click the bell, and you'll know when we're there. You may notice that we're coming to you today from a slightly different studio than we normally do. This is actually my office, and we'll have two other segments on the show today from two different locations. That's because of some exciting news having to do with our studio. I will be back at the end of the show in a very brief segment to explain some of that with you. You have a role to play in that, and I owe you thanks for that. I'm going to get to that just a little bit later. On the show today, assignment editor Joey Chester has an update on the U.S. military's response to Joe Biden's vaccine mandates. And fellow assignment editor Tara Snyder is going to comment on some of the more ridiculous, shall we say, fashion statements seen at the 2021 Met Gala this year. But first, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, may have conspired last year to commit treason against then-President Donald Trump and against the United States of America. That's a takeaway from a new book called Peril by Washington Post journalists Bob Woodward and Robert Costa, neither one of them a huge Trump fan. They recount that Milley called his Chinese counterpart, General Li Zuosheng of the People's Liberation Army, on October 30th, 2020, just before the 2020 election. According to the Post, Woodward and Costa wrote that during the call, Milley said, and I'm quoting, "General Lee, you and I have known each other for now 5 years. If we're going to attack, I'm going to call you ahead of time. It's not going to be a surprise." According to Woodward and Costa, Lee, quote, took the chairman at his word. Now, if what the Post journalists wrote is true, Milley conspired to commit treason. He may actually have committed treason just with that promise. He should be removed and prosecuted immediately. That's what a lot of people are saying. That's what we've written in commentary on the Western Journal ourselves. It's also certainly Donald Trump's position, except that Donald Trump doesn't believe it's true. That's an important consideration in this story. Former President Trump is calling for the general to be charged with treason if he secretly told his Chinese counterpart the U.S. had no plans to strike Beijing. The charge of treason could theoretically at least result in a death sentence in this country. Milley faces growing criticism from both sides of the aisle over allegations that were made in this book, Peril. And Trump said that Milley was dealing with the Chinese general behind the president's back if he was in fact dealing with him at all. In other words, Trump says, I didn't know anything about this conversation. If he was in fact assured that he'd be given notice of a pending attack, that looks like treason to Donald Trump. And Trump told Newsmax apparently that he has had, quote, so many calls saying that Milley's behavior was, in fact, treachery. Treason is, as I said, a capital offense in the United States. There are other punishments, of course. You can be imprisoned for 5 years. You can have fines of thousands of dollars. I think $10,000 is the minimum, if I remember correctly. Don't hold me to that, but I think that's right. Anyone charged with treason is also not capable ever of holding office in the future in the country. So that's all important, and it's important to know. It's also important to know, and this isn't being reported very much, and certainly not in right-wing media, which I'm assuming most of our readers pay more attention to than the establishment crazy people in the mainstream media. Trump called this report fake news. He said it was concocted by a weak and ineffective general. I think what Trump's getting at there is this is Milley trying to make himself sound more important than he actually was. And Trump also said of the two authors, Woodward and Costa, that they write, quote, write fiction, not fact, end quote. Trump also disputed, of course, any insinuation that he had considered attacking China. We should probably note that Trump is one of the presidents in modern, maybe the only president in modern history, certainly in my living memory, to not get the U.S. involved in another shooting war anywhere. So what do we do with this information? There are a lot of sort of back and forth going on here and a lot of things to consider. So I'm going to give you three things to take away from this, three things to think about. Number one, who are we going to believe? Do we believe Donald Trump? Do we believe General Milley? Do we believe Woodward and Costa? Look, I think President Trump did a fine job as president, but I also believe that he doesn't always tell the truth. I frankly don't think any president always tells the truth, and sometimes there are good reasons for that, frankly. Point being, I don't know that I take any of these guys at their word without doing my own research, which is my takeaway number one here. Do your own research. Don't trust the stories. Certainly don't trust the headlines. And really don't trust the memes and the tweets, even and maybe especially when they come from people that you agree with. That's called confirmation bias, and it's not, generally speaking, a good thing. Maybe especially don't believe them when you tend to believe them at first blush. In other words, don't be lazy. The nation needs patriots who are willing to do the work required to get to the truth, to be informed, to think critically, to make good decisions as a citizen of the United States. There's not a meme that's ever been written that's going to help you do that. And I've written memes before, and I'm telling you, that could be a starting point for a conversation. It cannot be the end point. It must not be. You must not let it be. Don't be intellectually lazy. Do the work. Second, people are people. All people are people. We all have our faults and we all have our strong points. Look, I served in the U.S. Army myself. There were men and women I served with whom I would absolutely trust with my life. Today, I'd trust them today with my life. But the fact that someone wears a uniform doesn't mean I trust them with my life, because there were others I served with who I would not. There were people I served with who I know, if we were in a foxhole, the second bullet got fired over our heads, he was going to be out and run in the other direction. I could name names. I remember who those people are. Of course, I'm not going to do that. Point being, the fact that you don a uniform, look, I thank you for your service. I honor your service, but it doesn't make you honorable. It's a suit of clothing. So just because General Milley, who, generally speaking, if somebody has attained that rank in the U.S. military, my default drive, I'm going to give them respect. But just because they are in that position doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily give them any more weight than anyone else. People are people. And number three, remember there are always at least three sides to any story. There's at least four in this one, but there are always at least three. There's your side, there's my side, and there's the truth. And neither one of us is ever likely to have a complete 100% lock on the truth. Look, here, just let me give you an example. What if Milley really did say to General Lee in China that he would give them advance notice of a warning? What if he really said that? But what if he did it as a psyop? Because he was planning to attack China, and he wanted to give them a false sense of security. Look, I don't think that is what happened here, and you don't either. But the idea isn't insane. It's not crazy that that could happen. And I'll bet that if you're really, really honest with me, that possibility never entered your mind until I said it. In fact, the only reason it probably entered my mind is because I used to do PSYOP for the United States Army. So I tend to look for that, and I tend to see it. I see it places where it doesn't exist, okay? But never think, the point is, never think you have a lock on the truth. That's my third takeaway. None of us does. We arrive at truth better when we investigate lots of possibilities, some of which we probably disagree with from the beginning, but we still dig into them to see what can stand up to that kind of interrogation and what can't. Even the Bible tells us that the heart is deceitful above all things. Who can understand it? When we dismiss ideas because we don't agree with the person generally who's giving them to us, or because they say something that disagrees with something we already agree with, we are missing out on the possibility to learn something about truth. So we make ourselves more or less useless in the war against the establishment media and fake news and lies when we won't investigate those things to prove them wrong, instead of just dismissing them because they come from a source we don't like, or because they sound like something that will end up disagreeing with something we already hold true. Look, that thing you hold true might be wrong. We have all been wrong before, right? So do the work. Don't let yourself get sucked into the memification of truth in the United States. Do the work. Don't become useless in the war for hearts and minds in this country. We need you too much for that. Don't let it happen. All right, I'm going to be back in just a few minutes to fulfill my promise to tell you about some exciting things going on here at WJ Live. Coming up, though, we have Joey and Tara with their stories, and then I'll be right back.
On September 9th, Joe Biden issued the biggest assault on medical freedom in American history. He issued the largest expansion in presidential power in American history. Now, he has to deal with the unintended consequences of that. That's what I'm talking to you guys about today. We're starting to see these consequences play out. You, unfortunately, may be contemplating whether or not you have to quit your job because of an order by a single man who is supposedly the most popular president in history. Well, you are not the only person in America right now who is facing this decision on whether or not to keep their job, whether or not to get vaccinated or submit to weekly testing. This is something that you share in common with a lot of people. There's someone prominent who has actually resigned from their job over Biden's tyrannical vaccine mandate. That person is a U.S. Lieutenant Colonel. He penned a scathing letter to Joe Biden saying that he resigned because he didn't want to submit to this tyrannical vaccine mandate. And the guy forfeited a 19-year pension. He gave up probably millions of dollars in retirement money to say no to Biden's medical tyranny. I mean, I think that's a pretty brave thing to do. If I was in that position, it's the same thing I would do. Now, this is going to be something that we see continue. There's probably a large number of people in the military who don't want to submit to this medical tyranny. Now, those people probably align with what you and I think. They're probably the conservatives, the Trump supporters, the true patriots in the military. The people that are going to submit, those are probably the Joe Biden people, the woke people, the social justice warriors, the CRT people, the people like General Milley. Those are the people that are going to be left in the military if Joe Biden gets his way. What that means is we're going to have a woke military. That means that the U.S., because of a single action from Joe Biden, is going to have a massive national security issue. I mean, a shrinking military where all the people that are left are social justice warriors, that's a big, big problem. And Joe Biden is going to have to figure out a way to deal with that. I mean, how insulting to tell the people that keep this country safe that they have to submit to medical tyranny or be kicked out of the military? That's insane. Joe Biden is going to face consequences for that. Another problem, Joe Biden may be creating hospital shortages. There's a rural Texas hospital that is now facing the possibility of completely closing down for good, because about 30% of the employees there are not vaccinated and don't want to get the vaccine. Texas law states that hospitals cannot require their employees to get vaccinated, but Joe Biden's medical tyranny supersedes that. So Joe Biden, in an attempt to supposedly reduce hospitalizations, reduce sickness from COVID, could actually create a hospital bed shortage nationwide, a frontline worker shortage nationwide through his medical tyranny. Is that what Joe Biden wants? Do you want to show up to the hospital and not have a hospital bed available for you because of Joe Biden? Is that what Joe Biden wants? Because that's what he's created. You may not, if you have a heart attack and you show up at a hospital, if you live in rural Texas, rural Montana, rural Arizona, there might not be a hospital bed for you because Joe Biden has said that those employees who don't want to submit to his tyranny, they don't deserve a job. So Joe Biden, you are actively making America more dangerous. You are creating a health problem. You are creating a hospital shortage. It's a major issue. It's another consequence that Joe Biden has created. It is one that he's not willing to face. It's one he's not willing to admit, but it's important for you to know about. There's another thing I want to address that I think is really alarming in all of the COVID talk. There's an NCAA athlete today that we found out that has had a very severe side effect of the COVID vaccine. He has had a debilitating heart side effect from taking the COVID vaccine that was forced upon him by the NCAA. And Joe Biden wants he wants young people to have to take this vaccine. He wants to make the decision for us whether or not a debilitating health defect supersedes a vaccine. No, it should be our decision. When we see cases like this of people having these severe side effects, Joe Biden, he doesn't care. He thinks that those severe side effects don't matter, but they do. And I'm not saying whether or not you should or shouldn't get the vaccine. I'm just saying it's important to have all the facts. And it's important, even if you are the most pro-vaccine person, to be against medical tyranny. Because the fact is, medical tyranny actually creates more anti-vax people. The medical tyranny doesn't make people want to get the vaccine. The messaging that you have to get the vaccine to protect the vaccinated doesn't make sense. So Joe Biden has actually created a bigger problem than he ever intended. And he has to live with that. Now, with all this said, there's a glimmer of hope. And hope is important right now when we are in such a dark time. We just came out of Afghanistan with 13 service members dead. We have the largest assault on medical freedom ever in America. We have a tyrannical government. We have military leaders who possibly committed treasonous offenses. It's a dark time, but there's hope. Arizona became the first state to sue the Biden administration over this tyrannical vaccine mandate. That is great news. There are people out there like you who are angry and have the power to fight against this. Another thing, Joe Biden's own chief of staff, the White House chief of staff, may have actually doomed the vaccine mandate from the start. He accidentally, or maybe he didn't accidentally do it, he retweeted something on Twitter that admitted that this vaccine mandate for private businesses was just a workaround to a federal vaccine mandate, which is going to give a great case to states like Arizona. So there is hope. Hope is important right now. Don't lose hope. Fight back. Join in the cause. And remember, Joe Biden is destroying the country, and he's going to have to live with that. You don't have to live with that. Joe Biden has to live with that. It is going to come back and bite him, and I hope the information I provided with you today shows that. Up next, we will be hearing about the disastrous, well, I don't know if it was a disaster, but the people there and the things that people were wearing was a disaster at the Met Gala. We'll see that topic next.
Thanks, Joey. So we are all recovering from the tragedy of American fashion that we witnessed this week. We saw so many amazing outfits, and by amazing outfits, I mean absolutely horrible. Usually what I see at the Met Gala is a competition for who can wear the most unattractive, ugly outfit and come out alive, if you want to put it that way. So this year's theme was an American fashion. So the whole idea was to have your outfit represent America, and some of them were fine. Most of them were terrible. So this idea of American fashion actually became an American tragedy, and that's to put it lightly. So the first victim of the Met Gala tragedy was Megan Rapinoe. She debuted on the red carpet with an absolutely hideous outfit that I would not be caught dead in. She debuted a red suit with an amazing blue clutch that said, "In Gay We Trust," which is a really interesting controversy, considering that America's premise has been "In God We Trust" since the dawn of time. Atheists and Satanists will tell you that that's bad and a violation of the rights, but luckily the Supreme Court agrees with us. Megan Rapinoe has been on a tangent for 10 years complaining about her life, which is pretty much what every person does at the Met Gala every year, and tries to paint this idea that they're this huge victim at a $30,000 dinner. Megan Rapinoe is especially tone deaf, considering that she's able to go to these galas and survive literally off of playing games her entire life. In fact, the only reason she has any notoriety at all is because she throws a fit every time she goes onto the soccer field. She's the pink-haired liberal that everyone is watching when the U.S. team walks onto the field. Even notable goalie Hope Solo has spoken out against how divisive the team has been in recent years. So she's faced wide criticism and wide backlash. Now, getting back to this horrible outfit, Megan Rapinoe is always complaining about how much money she makes because clearly the U.S. Olympic team for women isn't going to get the same viewership as the men's team, even though they're a pretty successful team. Unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, but you don't really have a reason to throw a fit when you're the one signing the contract. It's not like she's surprised every time she walks on the field and doesn't know what she's going to get paid. She knows for a fact. And so it's really funny that for the last decade, we've had to listen to Megan Rapinoe complain about her life, playing games on the soccer field, and basically making herself into this victimhood martyr while simultaneously celebrating the LGBT community. It's been shoved down our throats forever. But the one thing I want to point out is because her idol in her life has become money, in the US, In God We Trust is on all of our currency. And because American currency is her idol, it's really interesting and quite funny to see that she doesn't even realize that the thing that she worships is so full of irony. So that's kind of my hot take with Megan Rapinoe. Good for that one. Okay. Now let's move on to Cara Delevingne. Now, I usually like Cara Delevingne. She's been in a couple good movies, and she usually does some really interesting outfits at the Met Gala. Of course, that is no longer the case because now political statements at art galleries are in the vogue. So she wore a solid white outfit with a baby's bib on the front that said, "Peg the patriarchy." This is really classy, clearly. So the baby's bib actually fits her nicely because all she does is victimize and complain and woe about women's rights across America. Instances of sexism exist, but when you're going to act like you're going to have this broad brush for every single person in the U.S., you end up crying wolf and making claims about things that literally just aren't there. If you want to talk about male privilege, let's talk about the supposed male privilege of the exponential suicide rates in America. Let's talk about the male privilege of being drafted any day. Let's talk about the male privilege of men drastically leaving U.S. college campuses every single day. These are the kinds of things that we're complaining about, and no one talks about it. Instead, we're going to talk about women's rights and all of these things because it's the last hill to die on. Now, I'm sure the women in Afghanistan would love to know just how oppressed American women are, especially Cara Delevingne. Now, this is a fun little take here, but here's Kim Kardashian's outfit on the red carpet. It's actually 100% Taliban improved, and rumor has it her designer was actually celebrating and supporting CoverGirl's original campaign from Easy Breezy Beautiful to Easy Breezy Beautiful Burqa. So yeah, maybe that's a little bit of a hot take there, but it just truly shows you how tone deaf these red carpet women are. Finally, we have AOC. So she wore this beautiful tax the rich dress, and she might as well have said, "Let them eat cake." Of course, if AOC read that sentence, she probably wouldn't understand what "let them eat cake" is referring to, considering one of the tenets of being a democratic socialist is never having opened a history book. So this isn't the case of Cinderella going to a ball and having no one's expenses paid. She surely didn't roll up in some refurbished pumpkin. She probably rolled up in her brand new Tesla, the same Tesla that she drove to the airport while complaining about her abuela not having a functioning roof over her head or any stable living conditions, because like a true socialist, she's only focused on herself. Now, of course, that's Trump's fault still, right? Now, hopefully she didn't lose a shoe like Cinderella either, considering that one single slipper that she wore was probably $300. If you go to the designer's website, their shoes are ranging from $200 to $600. And let's be honest, people, if she's going to be at the Met Gala, she's going to have champagne taste on what she claims she has as a beer budget. No pun intended, considering her past career. And let's also point out that AOC is the same person who charged nearly $60 for her Walmart rebranded sweatshirts that also said tax the rich. Kind of funny that you want to get some cheap little sweatshirt that says tax the rich when only the rich can afford something so stupid. Now let's move on. So, of course, this was supposedly due to wanting to advocate for a living wage. But I wonder if living wage AOC would be willing to give up her $30,000 spot in order to give that wage to someone else in America. Because believe it or not, many Americans actually live off of $30,000 a year. But again, because AOC is this socialist elitist, she actually has no idea how real Americans live because she's busy raking in $170,000 a year while neglecting her own family members. So AOC is going to continue to be a democratic socialist. That shouldn't surprise anyone. But it's really interesting when you think about her one girls' night out could support one American for a year. Socialists only support their policies when they know that they're the ones who won't be impacted by them. And finally, notice how every one of these celebrities is wearing masks, or everyone behind them is wearing masks. It's funny how the help behind them is forced to be muzzled and not allowed to show their faces, but these social elites are. And as far as I know, the CDC still says that these people should be wearing masks. This shows how you are being treated as Americans compared to these social elite, and that shouldn't go unnoticed.
Okay, friends, I told you I'd be back. I promised. Well, maybe it's a threat. You can decide. But either way, here I am to tell you about some of the exciting stuff going on here at WJ Live. And I want to tell you about it because you are a part of it. Pretty much every time I'm on WJ Live, I ask you to go to westernjournal.com/join and become a member and support us financially. That financial support pays off in a few different ways. One, you get some benefit from it. You get an ad-free experience, almost ad-free experience anyway. When you read the page, we'll send you a nice mug. And right now, actually, you sign up, you pay for 10 months, you get 12 months. So you're getting 2 months free. So you get some nice things out of that. We also get to do stuff with that money. We bring interns in. So we have young conservative journalists that we get to show about how actual journalism works, not the fake news of the left-leaning establishment media, but actual truth finding. That's what we want to do. Find truth, share it with you. So we bring interns in to do that. You help finance that. But the other thing right now that you're financing that we're really excited about is a complete redesign of our studio. We are so excited to bring this to you. We're working on it this week. We hope it's going to be ready to shoot and produce in next week on Monday, the 20th, September 20th. If it takes us a day or two beyond that, bear with us, but that's what we're aiming at. So I beg you, go to westernjournal.com/join and consider being a member and supporting us that way. The other way you can support us, though, is go to YouTube. If you're not watching us on YouTube already, go to YouTube. If you are there, click the subscribe button, click the bell so that you're always notified, so that you're always notified, if you prefer. I have 3 degrees, you can tell, right? Because only when you have 3 degrees do you get to use words like notificated. If you click that bell, you will always be notified when a new episode goes live. The more viewers we get, look, we don't make a lot of money from YouTube. YouTube does not want to share a lot of money with us, okay? But we do make a little bit there. So every time you watch us, every time you see an ad on YouTube, every time you see an ad on our page on the Western Journal, you're supporting us financially. So that's another way that you can help us out to bring you new things like this brand new studio design. I'm really excited about it. I hope you will be too when you see it. It's going to just be a whole different experience for you. And the educational work that we do with our interns, and just you are financing 1,200 stories a month, essentially, that we bring you. That's an estimate, of course, but where we are trying to bring you truth month after month that you're not going to see in the establishment media. In fact, the establishment media doesn't want you to see it. If they could cut us off, they'd do it in a heartbeat. The only reason they don't is because of supporters like you. We need your help to stay on the air and to keep the Westerner Journal online. So please go to westernjournal.com/join, support us there. Subscribe and click that bell here on YouTube, support us there. And with that, we're going to finish up today's episode of WJ Live. We are here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. I hope to see you again every episode, but certainly next week as we start producing in our new studio, and you've been a part of it. Thank you. We want you to see it. So come back next week and make sure that